Dickey here, and I wanted to talk about the PCE that came out last Friday and give you my opinion on what it means for the market or what it really doesn't mean for the market. Now, I have a Yahoo post up here, and again, most of you that know my posts, I have a problem with people that are just trying to get clicks and views and don't necessarily post things that are really accurate. So in this particular one, it says the Fed's preferred inflation gauge shows the biggest monthly jump since May. Okay, so what? What's the big deal? Why is that important? And they don't really go on to explain that. And that's my biggest problem with it. My problem with it is that it's actually lower. Now, I want to start with something besides that. And this is just a general statement. So what this is showing you is that the average for the PCE is 3.31% from 1960 to 2023. The rest of it's not really relevant because it's talking about highs and lows, and it honestly doesn't really matter. My point is that the average has been 3.3. And yeah, I know the Fed wants to get it down to 2, but does it really matter in the scheme of things? The answer is it really doesn't. But here's where I want you to focus. This is the core PCE, which is supposedly what the Fed is actually keeping an eye on. Okay. And if you'll notice, we're at 3.6%. Now, I know it's not 3.3, but wow, it's pretty darn close. And it's dropped from 5 down to 3. And yeah, maybe he wants to get it down to 2, and maybe we'll get there, maybe we won't. But again, how important really is it for the economy? Because frankly, the economy ran pretty darn good from 1960 to 2023. Could be wrong. Don't think I am. You guys, most of you lived through that. You got a pretty good idea what it's going to be. So instead of focusing on the positive, which is that we've had basically a fantastic trend from here, just a nice straight line all the way down to here, and no one's talking about it going up. Everyone's talking about things continuing to slow down, which that was the other part of this wonderful little statement on here. It talks about core. Again, not in a positive way or how it actually means anything. It talks about the stickiness of the core. Great. It talks about employment, that it's not going to change the federal funds rate. But my problem is every time they come out there and it's still too high. It's still too high. Really? Guess what? It's going to be too high tomorrow. It's going to be too high next month. It's going to be too high for the next several months because it's not getting down to 2% in a day. When it's at 3.3, it's just not going to do that. I don't know why they think it will. But again, any normal human being can actually look at this trend and go, okay, from 5.3 to 3.6 is a pretty nice drop. But if it took a year to get from 5.3 to 3.6, it's not going to take 1 month to get from 3.6 to 2. It's just not. We know this. But we beat it up every single day. And it just gets old. It gets boring. We've already talked about this. We know what the problem with PCE is. It is not jobs. It is not any of that stuff. Which this is the interesting part. They talk about the jobs in here. Now, again, you got this nice little rate from the core. Look at this. The core and the regular, they're going hand in hand, which they should. But it's a nice straight line. Why don't we talk about that? That inflation's coming down on its goal where we need it to go. This is the part I want to talk about. Disposable income growth has come under pressure as wages and job growth slows. Isn't that what you guys continue to try to tell us that the Fed's trying to do? Am I missing something here? Sounds like we're getting what we want. Maybe I'm wrong. Again, it's also saying that what the Fed is trying to do is working. Now, again, most of you have listened to my other videos. I don't think the Fed's done anything. I think they could have done nothing and we would be back where we're at already. So again, that's just my personal opinion on it. But, facts are what they are. They've done what they've done. We are where we're at. And, why not just deal with reality? My issue with this is that we don't focus on what's actually happening and how it's going to do anything. Is it going to affect what the Fed's doing the rest of the week? No. Is it going to affect the Fed 2 weeks from now, a month from now? Again, if things come in different, maybe. They're going to come out on Wednesday and they're going to come out and say, hey, we're going to be data dependent. Hey, we're going to keep an eye on CPI, PCE. We're going to keep an eye on all this stuff and we're going to make decisions based upon what the data says, which is what I would want them to do. I don't want them to do anything else but follow the data. Because, if the data starts going the opposite direction, more than 1 month, but several months, and there's a trend, and yeah, they're going to probably need to do more. But at this point, there is literally nothing out here that's telling that they need to do anything more, anything new. What will be interesting is to see how the market responds to what happens this week. What does the Fed actually say? How do they say it? How it is interpreted? And it's going to be interesting to see the people on the news, how they take what is said and then how the market responds to it, which Again, I might be completely wrong here, but I'm guessing that the market's going to look at this and say, hey, he's not raising rates. And depending on what the bonds do and the treasury yields do is what the market's going to do. If the bond yields go up, or if we get up to 5 on the 10-year, 5.25 on the 10-year, stocks are going to drop. But if we see that continue to drop down to 4.7, 4.6, stocks are going to rally. It really is that simple. But more than that, look at look at this time of year. What do we think is going to happen here? Everybody talks about spending in the consumer. I almost can guarantee you, and again, I guess I can't give guarantees, so I'm not going to give a guarantee here, but if I were a betting person, and if you guys are betting people, what do you think is going to happen with Christmas time? People are going to spend money to have a nice Christmas. They're going to spend money to have a good Halloween. They're going to spend money to have Thanksgiving. They're going to spend money, even if they don't have it, to get through this holiday season. That's just normal. That's very typical. Show me the last time we didn't do it. Now, what happens next year? If we start getting some layoffs, if we start seeing real estate roll over and we start seeing some other issues, that's when I think you're going to start seeing some of this stuff hit the fan. And I think you're going to start seeing what would be more of a traditional recession if we get one. But I think you're going to see more traditional recessionary items coming through the pipe. But I don't think you're going to see it till next year. And it might not actually show up until the second quarter numbers that'll start coming out in April. We may not even see them in the first quarter. It will happen. I do think there's too many things that are adding up and piling up. And, the longer we stay at this interest rate, the harder it's going to be. And yes, an 8% interest rate's pretty high on a mortgage. I do think they're going to want to bring that down. But again, you're talking for a year. It's not going to be there for the next decade, barring something we don't see. The data does not support that. Doesn't support a cut from the Fed, which I don't think you'll see anytime soon. But I've said that from the beginning. I don't think they need to go any higher. I don't think they need to cut. I think they need to stay here, make sure the inflation's where they want it to be, and then start making cuts. Again, barring some other data that we don't see that is coming up and may become an issue down the road. Now, yes, there's more things in here, but I don't understand why the headline needs to be this one. And if someone can explain it to me, put it in comments, because I'd like to kind of hear your point on this. Unless it's just you saying that they're trying to get people to come look at their feed, because again, that's my point. If you have some other legitimate reason why somebody would come out here and say the Fed's preferred inflation gauge shows the biggest monthly jump since May, why that's important, or why it's more important than the simple fact that it's actually down to 3.6%. To me, this should be the headline number. This should be what we're focusing on consistently, not the stupidity that it's up higher than it has, not this. This should be the headline. So someone can show me why that should be the headline. Please explain it to me. Again, I'm focusing on this. I'm focusing on the fact that going forward, barring gasoline going crazy, and I don't mean going up to 95, 96, because it's already gone back down again with the whole Israel-Hamas thing. My focus is going to be on core inflation and where the inflation is going to go forward and how the bond yields respond. Because to me, that's the biggest catalyst here. And until we see real estate roll over on the inflation front and it's not at 7%, we're not going to see two. It's just not going to get there. It's too big of a piece of the pie. We've talked about this, and I'll continue to talk about it. It is literally the number one item on there. On the statistical relevance factor, it's the only thing. Until that gets down, the rest of the numbers aren't going to get down where we want them to be. So I'm tired of hearing about them saying inflation's too high. We know it's too high. It's going to continue to be too high. Going to be too high next month. Guess month is going to be too high in January. Once we see real estate roll over, then we can start talking about it. Until then, I don't think it's going to happen. I think you've seen too many companies come out, set their prices back a year and a half ago when things maxed out when Russia invaded Ukraine. They haven't lowered them. They didn't come down. They've already built it into their pricing, so they're in pretty good shape. Companies are in good shape in general. I don't see major issues with the companies going forward as far as hitting the numbers. The question is, does the economy roll over and become an issue? But as far as the inflation and as far as the Fed is concerned, until we see real estate roll over, none of this is relevant. That's my opinion. So I don't see this having any effect on what the Fed was or is going to do. I don't see the Fed doing anything on Wednesday. It's really going to be what the Fed says and how the market responds to it. Dickey out.